Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I am Scott Wiener. I have the honor of representing San Francisco and northern San Mateo County in the California State Senate. And I have the honor of being the lead author of Senate Bill 982, groundbreaking legislation to address the affordability crisis in California's home insurance market. I'm joined here today by an incredible coalition of consumer advocates and survivors of extreme weather, including the Altadena fire that devastated parts of LA a little over a year ago. I'm also honored to be joined by my colleague, Senator Jerry McNerney, and we will have some other members here shortly. I want to really particularly thank the survivors who are here today and otherwise who are speaking up and advocating. It takes enormous courage and strength to take a deeply traumatic experience, such as losing a home or family members in a disaster, in a climate-fueled disaster, and to turn that tragedy, that trauma, into a positive force for change so that others do not suffer those same traumas. I'm so grateful to the survivors in particular for being here today. And I want to thank my colleagues, particularly those representing districts deeply impacted by the fires and by other climate disasters for joining with us. And I know that Assemblymember Al-Hawari will be here shortly, whose family was personally impacted. We know that the cost of home insurance in California is an absolute crisis, and that word gets used a lot, crisis, but this is a crisis. We have homeowners who simply cannot afford insurance and who are taking huge risks as a result. It prices people out of home ownership, period. It is an absolute economic and social crisis for California. The cost of home insurance in our state has risen nearly 30% above inflation over the past decade, with increases as high as 150% in some parts of the state. And with private insurers refusing to renew a record number of insurance plans, a massive number of Californians are now relying on California's insurer of last resort, the FAIR Plan. Now, even the FAIR Plan is seeing costs rise to unsustainable levels. The FAIR Plan is currently seeking approval to raise insurance rates by more than 35% after they were forced to pay out more than $3.5 billion for just 2 fires in LA a year ago. Needless to say, Californians cannot afford this, and it is not sustainable. And the crisis is especially acute for those who survive extreme weather events. The road to recovery is long, and for some, the high cost of insurance means that they will never be able to return to the homes that they have lost. With Californians paying such a massive cost for climate-related disasters, we have to ask who is not paying. We know who is: the survivors, taxpayers, policyholders whose rates are going up throughout the state. But the answer in terms of who is not paying is fossil fuel corporations, the corporations that produce the product, fossil fuels, that have caused this crisis. Fossil fuel companies who knew decades ago that their product would lead to these disasters, yet they of climate-driven disasters, given the role that fossil fuel corporations have played in getting us here. We must provide a path to insurance affordability as we tackle the challenges that we face on the front lines of the climate crisis in our state. SB 982 will provide a path to that affordability by making fossil fuel companies, not Californians, pay the cost of these disasters. The bill will authorize the Attorney General to bring fossil fuel companies responsible for climate disasters to court on behalf of the people of California to recover either losses to the FAIR Plan for a climate attributable event like a flood or a wildfire, or costs paid, or to recover costs paid by private policyholders related to climate disasters, including premium increases or investments in infrastructure changes on one's property that your insurance requires related to climate risks, such as cutting down brush near your house or replacing the roof with a more fire-safe option. We know that this kind of protection could save Californians a massive amount of money. If laws like this had been in place over the past 10 years, California homeowners and businesses could have received over $62 billion in compensation for climate disasters. We know that the years ahead are going to be dramatically more dangerous, tragically, when it comes to climate disasters. And we can't allow Californians and our residents, our small businesses, to be left holding the bag. SB 982 will allow us to shift the cost of the climate crisis off the backs of Californians and onto the fossil fuel companies that recklessly pushed us to this unbelievably unsustainable place as a state. Thank you so much, and great. I want to turn it over now to my great colleague from Los Angeles, Assemblymember Shadeh El-Hawari, whose family was personally impacted by this disaster. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shadeh El-Hawari. I represent South Central Los Angeles in the State Assembly, and I am also spent part of my childhood in Altadena, where my family still currently lives, and we're incredibly impacted by the Eaton fires. Altadena is a special community full of talented people rooted in generational legacy that other neighborhoods strive to be. Seeing how much this fire affected my family, our neighbors, our community, and even our students was heartbreaking. We are so thankful to the survivors who have been doing the work and just want to recognize their resilience for pushing to ensure that everyone is held accountable in this time, to ensure that they know that they have the supports necessary at a time that has been so tragic for so many. Survivors are fighting to break through the noise of traditional crisis support to make sure their voices are heard, and are fighting to keep Altadena on the map. And we want to honor those who also passed away in the fires. Because of what happened, our communities were forever changed. We are joined today by some of those survivors who are a testament to the resilience of our communities. Gail and Rashid Ali, who are photographers and advocates who have been doing the work with the Eaton Fire Collaborative to ensure that those who have been displaced, as well as themselves who have experienced that, are able to come together in this moment. Elisa Jacobs-Nixon is here as well, who will share her story about how she paid her insurance premiums, and yet when she needed the support, the insurance company was nowhere to be found. There are groups like Altadena Rising who grew directly out of this time, directly out of the ashes, and we have to continue to ensure that they are centered in these conversations. The opportunity today with Senator Scott Wiener is huge to ensure that we are just taking one step in the recovery process to hold fossil fuel companies accountable, to hold insurance companies accountable, to ensure we have affordability. The legislature must keep fighting for survivors and all those who have been affected. And now I'd like to introduce the survivors who are here with us today, Gail and Rashid Ali, as well as Elisa Jacobs Nixon.
Good morning. My name is Rashid Ali, and this is my wife, Gail Ali. We lived in Altadena for 33 years. We raised our family and built our lives in a community that reflected our values, diversity, creativity. It's a place where we look out for one another. We're not representing ourselves today, we're representing our entire community. We want to keep Altadena front and center. Communities like ours are being put at risk by extreme weather disasters, and they're made frequent and more severe by fossil fuels and the oil companies. Who knew that their products would cause so much damage? And obviously, they've chosen over time, they've chosen profits over responsibility. Last year, while we were celebrating our 43rd wedding anniversary out of the country, fire destroyed our home. We became refugees overnight, trying to find housing from afar. It was 3 months until we could come back to Los Angeles and see the devastation in our neighborhood. Our house was gone, but so was our entire neighborhood of Northwest Altadena. Everything we owned, our furniture, our photos, my music studio, my wife's photo studio, all of our artwork, all of our works in progress, gone. We had insurance, but insurance didn't mean we were protected. Our policy was bought decades ago, never adjusted to reflect the real value of our home, which leaves a massive financial gap that we are struggling to fill. And we're not alone. The majority of our neighborhood in Altadena is at least 60% are over the age of 50. So senior citizens such as ourselves who are having to rebuild their lives at this stage. To receive even partial reimbursement, we are forced to itemize a lifetime of belongings. That was very traumatic, and it was deeply moving.
The system failed us. We're rebuilding because of GoFundMe, grants, and people who showed up for us. Like us, our son's home didn't burn, but it was so contaminated, he had to take it down to the studs. Families across California are learning the same painful lesson. After disaster, insurance falls short, and survivors are left holding the bill. That's why we support the Affordable Insurance Recovery Act. This bill ensures survivors like us and taxpayers aren't the only ones paying for these disasters. It gives the state the power to make oil companies pay their fair share. Funds that will stabilize insurance, support recovery, and keep families housed. This bill is about making California insurable again. We urge our leaders to pass it so families like ours, like our neighbors, like our friends, like our community can rebuild, stay insured, and remain where they belong, in Altadena. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Elisa Jacobs Nixon. I am representing the Eaton Fire Survivors Network with more than 10,000 Los Angeles fire survivors and allies. I've lived in Altadena for 20 years. It's where we raised our 2 sons, romped with our 2 golden retrievers, adored our neighbors, and built our life. I never imagined that decisions made by powerful oil corporations, decisions that have fueled more frequent and more destructive fires, would one day upend our lives. The night of the Eaton fire, all of us have a story of what happened that night. a traumatic story that will forever be a part of our lives' narratives. It was a night of chaos, a terrifying cascade of flames barreling down mountains, running to alert neighbors, shouting to be heard over the ferocious wind, fleeing in the car, dodging falling wires and branches, text messages, phone calls, watch duty apps. These snapshots on repeat. People, loved ones and strangers lost their homes that night, their businesses, everything they owned, and some lost their lives. The day after, flames still erupting, we found our neighborhood and town mostly incinerated. But our home was among the few still standing. Aside from the complete and utter shock and disbelief of it all, the survivor's guilt, a new devastation unfolded. Our house was severely contaminated by toxic smoke, soot, ash intrusion, which rendered it unlivable. To this day, our house remains frozen in time from January 7th, 2025, with our belongings marinating in toxicity. The emotional and financial toll on all of us has been profound. But we are one of many. Nearly 7 in 10 displaced fire survivors remain out of their homes. Survivors are facing insurance battles, rising insurance costs. Ours went up 27% this year. Housing instability, ongoing financial and emotional crises. The Affordable Insurance and Recovery Act asks oil corporations who have driven these weather disasters to help pay for the damage and do their part. Why are families carrying the burden alone? Recovery from a weather disaster should be a path forward for survivors, not an obstacle course. We know how to fix what's broken. We just need the courage to do it. It is our responsibility and our duty to speak out, and that's why we are here. Let's pass this bill and make insurance affordable and protect our citizens. Something needs to be done. This bill is part of that something. Thank you.
My name is Marisa Guayo. I'm a mother, a daughter, and a proud lifelong resident of Shelton in San Diego. I'm a flood survivor, and what happened to my family is happening to communities all across California. In 2024, devastating flood destroyed every home on my family's property and just ours. We are a multi-generational, working-class family. What had been a place of music, shared meals, and daily life was suddenly gone. Our homes looked like a war zone. Neighbors were trapped inside, screaming for help. Children, elders, pets, and entire families were displaced, all at once. We are paying the price for disasters made worse by billion-dollar oil corporations, not by us. After the flood, our community was left behind. Even though 1,500 homes suffered severe damage, help was slow or non-existent, and families were left on their own. Insurance fell short, debt piled up, and just recently, my father received notice that our flood insurance is being canceled altogether. My own home is partially rebuilt, and I'm carrying more debt than ever before. During the rainstorms just last month, the only help we received was empty sandbags. We had to find our own sand to protect what little we had left. Once again, we were abandoned by the systems meant to protect us. These floods didn't just damage homes, they set families back generations. My father woke up at 4 a.m. every morning for 30 years to work as a concrete finisher for the county of San Diego. Building those homes was his dream, so his children and grandchildren could have stability. I had to watch my father's life's work be washed away in hours. This is California's insurance crisis. Families face canceled policies, rising premiums, and displacement, while the biggest corporations keep profiting. The Affordable Insurance and Recovery Act changes that. by holding oil companies accountable and using those funds to protect families and help communities rebuild. Our legislators have a choice: real support for Californians or more empty sandbags.
Thank you again to all of our courageous survivors. We're so appreciative for you being here and for turning your tragedy into positive, forward-looking change for California. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Assembly Member Alex Lee for being here today, or he was here somewhere. Thank you, Assemblymember Lee. Next, I want to bring up Robert Hurl with the Consumer Federation of California.
Good morning. My name is Robert Hurrell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Consumer Federation of California. I want to thank Senator Wiener, the other members who are here in attendance. I also want to profoundly thank the survivors. The stories are shocking and harrowing and awful. And Senator Wiener used the word courage for the survivors to come forward. And now it's time for us to pivot and see if the legislature has the courage to take the next necessary steps to protect consumers and the policyholders and these survivors. I should note I also had almost 6 years as a deputy insurance commissioner at the Department of Insurance under the previous insurance commissioner. So I'm more than a little familiar with the insurance crises and frustrations that so many of the survivors are talking about. Fair plan growth skyrocketing. The surplus lines market, which hasn't been mentioned yet this morning, these are companies that actually aren't properly fully licensed in California. That market is exploding as well. The Department of Insurance doesn't have full-throated regulatory authority over those companies. So consumers are even less protected than they would be under a traditional carrier or the FAIR plan. Massive rate hikes. You've heard some of the data and statistics. It's what I'm seeing now that wasn't the case before is rate hike approved and then another fresh rate hike already being asked for. So rate hike, I call that stacking rate hikes. This is very dangerous. The lack of accountability for the insurance industry. State Farm likes to say, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. But I think the survivors and others in these communities will tell you that when you really need them, far too many of the insurance companies aren't there. They aren't there in a meaningful way. And then they put the survivors through another cycle of torture and hell to try to get the benefits that as policyholders they've been paying for years. It is adding insult to injury, and that's a mild way of putting it. We at the Consumer Federation of California believe that there is a fundamental disconnect between those causing, directly and indirectly, the problem, and those exacerbating it as well, and the California consumers and policyholders who wind up paying at the end. It's a giant cost shift that's occurring on the backs of consumers from fossil fuel companies. And investments being made by insurance companies themselves and banks are actually making climate change worse. They don't like to talk about that, but hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested in projects that exacerbate climate change from the same companies that say, we believe in climate change, and then it's a question of cost shifting to others to pay for it. So this bill really is about tools, in my opinion, tools to help the communities and survivors. You look at a community like Altadena with a disproportionately high number of African American residents. Why is that? That is because of the sad history of redlining, which was basically institutionalized racism historically by the insurance companies. That's why Altadena has the character that it does, the character that is helping survivors join together and help one another in this true spirit of community. But this bill is also about legal tools so that California's Attorney General can actually add some fundamental accountability to the system. So I'd like to thank Senator Wiener, the other members and co-authors on this bill, and now it's time for us to move this bill and have the courage of the legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to also acknowledge Assemblymember Greg Hart from Santa Barbara is here. Thank you, Assemblymember. And then I'd like to bring up two of my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Ben Allen, who represents the Palisades, and Senator Jerry McNerney for brief remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, and thank you for your leadership on this. You've been pushing on this for several years now, and it's important for us to stand with you. My name is Ben Allen, and I also have the great honor, the dubious honor, but the great honor of representing a major portion of the fire zone in the Palisades that changed my life, changed the life of our community. And I want to just also acknowledge the pain, the heartache, the challenge of our survivors that are here. Our entire office has been spent the last year just trying to assist people through all of these incredibly difficult rebuilding efforts, getting insurance, trying to get their claims paid, getting nickeled and dimed, getting screwed around with after they lost everything. And it's been a very difficult experience, and it's part of what inspires me to engage in this sort of work. We know that the fires were as ferocious as they were because of climate change. There's no question about that. And in fact, insurance availability and affordability is probably where the climate crisis is hitting people most intensely in their pocketbooks. We've known about climate change. We've known about these issues for many years. The oil industry, of course, has spent a lot of money trying to obfuscate and trying to tell us not to look here, not to look there, trying to come up with bogus reports that are now getting new oxygen under this White House. But the crisis is now really hitting us in our faces. And it's impacting us on so many levels. The public health challenges, the tragedy that these folks had to go through, and now our insurance premiums skyrocketing, people getting dropped, our utilities and our energy system now forced to come to be bailed out by the rest of us because of these huge liabilities. And of course, the folks that have actually been driving this the most, who've got the most responsibility, are the oil and gas folks. The industry that has been pushing these products onto the market, that have been driving our changing climate. And in the meanwhile, it's everybody else who's left holding the bag financially. The insurers, the utilities, the public, survivors, the taxpayers. And so that's what we're trying to address here today. We can't keep waiting. This problem keeps getting worse and worse. It's time to demand accountability, and that's exactly what the Affordable Insurance and Recovery Act does. And I'm so proud to be co-authoring this bill. I'm excited to get this bill signed into law this year. This is an important step in terms of accountability, but also righting the ship in terms of our system and making it so that the folks that are most responsible for these climate-related disasters are actually paying their fair share associated with the cost. So thank you to our fearless leader, Scott Wiener, in this effort, to our wonderful fire survivors, to our great partners in this effort, including Consumer Federation, the California Environmental Voters, which has been at the lead of raising the alarm with regards to climate, how it's impacting working people in our state. This is about speaking our truth, standing up to say enough is enough. And with that, I'd like to invite my good friend, who's been a wonderful climate champion, both in Congress and now here in our state Senate, Jerry McNerney.
Good morning. My name is Jerry McNerney. I represent Senate District 5, which is San Joaquin County and part of Alameda County. I'm a proud co-author of SB 982, and I thank my colleague Scott Wiener for authoring this bill. It took a lot of courage and a lot of foresight to do that, and my colleagues for co-sponsoring it as well. The oil companies have known about climate change for a very long time. I first learned about climate change in 1969 in freshman engineering at the United States Military Academy at West Point. So the armed forces of this country have been preparing for climate change for decades. And what did the oil companies do despite the fact they knew that climate change was coming? They suppressed information about climate change. They promoted oil. They promoted fossil fuel use in this country and around the world, and they reaped in billions and billions of dollars. Now, a statistic of note is that since 1991, there's been $28 trillion of climate-related damage inflicted upon the world by these companies and these actions. So now it's time to take action on ourselves, by ourselves, with the support of the legislature, with the support of the people of California, and start holding these oil companies accountable. SB 982 will start to do that. And again, I thank my colleague for for authoring this bill, and I urge my colleagues to make this a very successful legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McNerney. Okay, and to close us out, I want to ask, invite up one of the true icons, not just of California, but of everywhere, someone who has dedicated her entire life to workers, to immigrants, to the labor movement, and she is here today to express her support. So, Dolores Huerta.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank our senators here and our legislators, our assembly persons also, for having the courage to introduce this legislation. I think for the rest of us, when we saw the devastating fires and we have seen the floods that have affected people's lives, all of us think, what can I do? What could I have done? And I know that at that moment we all felt helpless, and there was really very little that we could do at that point except maybe donate to the organizations that were helping the victims. But now is our moment. Now is our time. As myself, who have been an advocate most of my life, I just want to say to everybody that we have to join in this struggle, okay? We know that this is not an easy piece of legislation. There is going to be a lot of pushback. We know that the oil companies have tons and tons of money, and that they're going to put a lot of pressure on our legislators and policymakers not to pass this legislation. So that means that we now have a big job to do. We have got to get out there, we've got to organize, got to go into our communities, explain to them why this is necessary. Because this has not only injured the people that are the survivors, it is injuring all Californians, because throughout the whole state of California, they are having the same issues in terms of their insurance rates that are going up, or people that are being denied insurance, So this is our moment. This is our moment that we've got to really organize, and make sure that our legislators in California, whomever they may be, that they are on the right side, because at the end of the day, it is people power over corporate power. It's people power over corporate power, and this is the one thing that we know that we can do to make those that are responsible, have been responsible for decades, to create the situation that we're in. The elephants in the room, okay? We've got to make them step up. We've got to make them responsible. We've got to make them contribute, and contribute not only their share, but more than that, because we've got to make sure that we can end this crisis. Yes, we can do it. Si se puede. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dolores. Okay, that wraps up our speakers. If there are any press questions, we're happy to answer a few. No, this is about the bill, and we want to make sure that we don't have those disastrous fires in the first place. That's why we're here today.
I know when it comes to big oil and fossil fuel companies overall, there are some key names here in the state, but are we going after any specific individuals and players with this bill, and are we in communication with any of them about accountability right now?
This is an industry-wide issue. It's not about one company. These are some of the largest corporations on the planet who have just really massive profits. And under the Trump administration, which is pro-fossil fuel, and apparently President Trump appears to be okay with communities burning down and getting flooded, as long as the fossil fuel industry continues to fund him. And so it's about holding an industry accountable, yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.